In the summer of 1979, the serene wilds of southern Alberta, Canada, were shaken by a mystery that would haunt generations. 10 outdoor enthusiasts' friends from the bustling university town of Lethbridge set out for a weekend expedition along the remote trails surrounding Granite Lake, a region famed for its breathtaking scenery and treacherous wilderness. Their destination, an unmarked camping site deep amidst towering pines and labyrinthine valleys, far removed from the beaten path. The group, led by 25-year-old Marcus Caldwell, an aspiring documentary filmmaker, was a tight-knit circle with diverse skills. Emily Sloan, an expert in botany, Richard Rick Lee, a geology PhD student, Diana Torres, a wildlife photographer, and others, each bringing unique knowledge to the trip. They had been planning this getaway for months, meticulously gathering supplies, mapping their route, and reassuring concerned families left behind in Lethbridge. But on the 4th day, none of the campers returned. At first, police surmised a delay, perhaps a storm or an injured hiker. Search parties soon scoured the dense forests and the rocky cliffs around Granite Lake. Helicopters circled above. Experienced trackers followed every conceivable trail. Yet, the campers and every trace of their existence had vanished. Locals began whispering about the Granite Curse, a legend as old as the lake itself, speaking of lost explorers and vanishing hunters. For over 40 years, the fate of the Granite Ten remained an open wound in Alberta's collective memory. Then, in 2021, fire crews battling a late summer blaze stumbled upon something chilling beneath the blackened moss and soot. Unearthed by falling trees and flooding rains were curved metal frames. Scraps of canvas and buried collections of personal items, thermoses, journals, and faded Polaroid photographs. The arrangement was strange, not scattered, but purposefully entombed beneath the earth. The discovery reignited public obsession with the Granite Ten. Authorities swiftly called in forensic archaeologist Dr. Whitney Marlowe, whose expertise was unraveling historical puzzles. But the deeper she dug, literally and figuratively, the more confounding the case became. Who had hidden the campers' belongings so carefully, and why? And after all these years, could any hope of truth remain, or had the wilderness claimed every answer? The investigation into the Granite Ten sent shockwaves through southern Alberta and captured the national spotlight. All eyes watched as Dr. Whitney Marlowe and her team began unearthing the buried campsite, carefully documenting every object and fragment, no matter how ordinary it seemed. Each recovered item, an enamel mug, a tattered jacket, a waterproof notebook, was a silent testament to the lost campers. But it was the arrangement of the items that puzzled Dr. Marlowe. The tents hadn't collapsed randomly. They were buried in an arc, spaced with mathematical precision, their entrances all facing a single boulder marked with a mysterious carved symbol, a circle bisected by a jagged line. The journals, though water-damaged, revealed part of the group's story, a chronicle of laughter around campfires, botanical sketches, notes about animal tracks, and cryptic mentions of noises in the woods, and a persistent feeling of being watched. Forensic analysis soon confirmed what Marlowe suspected. The remains had not been buried at the time of disappearance. The gear had been moved and carefully entombed years later. But by who and why create such an elaborate tableau? Dr. Marlowe dug deeper, both into the ground and the local community's history. She found that 6 months after the campers vanished, several nearby homesteads had reported strange sightings. A solitary figure, sometimes described as a trapper or poacher, moving at dusk through the woods with uncanny stealth. One account spoke of a man with a limp, seen carrying bundles of tarps and rope. Theories flooded in. Some believed it was a disturbed hermit. seeking revenge on outsiders. Others suspected a cult, given the ritualistic layout of the campsite. A few whispered of the supernatural, that the Granite Lake itself, with its ancient, fog-shrouded waters, was the culprit. Meanwhile, families of the missing continued to search for meaning. Marcus Caldwell's younger cousin, Jamie, now an emergency doctor and herself a veteran hiker, dedicated her life to keeping the story alive. Giving lectures, organizing memorial climbs, and obsessively combing through every recovered page from the lost journals. Decades after the disappearance, the Granite Lake mystery appeared unsolvable. But then, Dr. Marlowe noticed something amid the retrieved artifacts: an undeveloped roll of film, miraculously preserved in a waterproof case. With bated breath, her team sent it for specialized processing. What secrets, if any, would those long-hidden images finally reveal about that fateful journey into the heart of the wild? When the long-forgotten roll of film was finally developed, the room fell silent as the images flickered onto a digital screen. The photographs, grainy, sun-bleached, speckled with age, captured the final days of the Granite Ten. There were candid shots of friends paddling a canoe across glass-still waters, a smiling Diana Torres stringing up her camera, quiet moments of campfire meals, and a few playful staged photos among the mossy boulders. For a moment, it was just the story of a joyful group on a long-awaited adventure. But as Dr. Whitney Marlowe studied the final frames, her heart pounded. The tone shifted. The last few shots, clearly taken in haste at dusk, showed the campsite from odd, low angles. In one, a shadowy figure lurked between tree trunks in the distance, a silhouette that did not resemble any of the missing campers. The next frame, shakier, appeared to show some form of crude symbol etched into tree bark, a distorted version of the same circle and line icon found on the central boulder. The last image was the most unsettling. It was out of focus, almost entirely black, except for a faint flash of light catching something metallic, what looked like a clasp or a tent pole half buried under moss. The group had tried to capture a final message before darkness, or perhaps something else was watching them, moving closer. The discoveries lent new urgency to the investigation. Dr. Marlowe and authorities pressed further into local records, searching for any mention of the symbol. It turned up in old forestry reports dating back to the 1930s, always near stories of vanishings or abandoned shelters. An archivist from a nearby Cree community shared that the mark was once referred to as the Watcher's Eye, an omen of danger or a warning to stay away. Meanwhile, the forest around Granite Lake seemed to close in tighter. Rangers reported fresh disturbances. A path silently swept clear, a circle of stones rearranged after every thunderstorm. Someone or something still moved through the woods, performing the same rituals, guarding the same secrets. Jamie Caldwell felt the weight of unfinished stories. She received an anonymous letter at her home in Lethbridge. The message was vague, threatening. Some truths are meant to stay buried by the lake. Leave the past in peace. Jamie refused. Convinced that someone with intimate knowledge of the Granite Wilderness was still alive, she returned to the lake herself, seeking closure or confrontation. Jamie Caldwell returned to Granite Lake in late autumn, when the forests thinned and the first icy winds rattled the branches. Armed with nothing but a camera, a notebook, and the courage built from years of unanswered questions, she set out to trace her cousin's last known route. Guided by faded maps, Dr. Marlowe's excavation notes, and her own intuition, she found the area where the buried campsite had been unearthed. What she saw chilled her. The soil, once turned and studied by archaeologists, now seemed freshly disturbed in places. Moss and earth had been carefully replaced, but subtle footprints circled the area, too large for most animals, too deliberate for hikers. Jamie crouched, heart pounding, and discovered a recent marking on a nearby fir trunk, the Watcher's Eye, freshly carved into the bark. She left an audio recorder, hoping to capture what words could not explain, and camped nearby, unable to shake the sensation of being observed. That night, wind moaned through the pines and at the edge of her firelight. She caught glimpses of movement, a shadow halting just beyond sight, then vanishing. At dawn, she retraced her steps, guided by distant cawing of crows. In a shallow ravine nearby, she stumbled upon objects not noted in prior reports, bundles wrapped in oiled canvas hidden beneath tangled roots. Inside, she found faded scraps of clothing, notebooks in a spidery hand, and more photographs, some depicting the Granite Ten in candid, unguarded moments, others showing the lake and forest from odd, surveillance-like angles. Jamie's heart raced as she realized someone had maintained a hidden archive, returning over the years to check and add to the legacy of that vanished expedition. The new notebooks revealed cryptic sketches and detailed weather logs, always marked with that same crude warning symbol. Determined, Jamie headed for the nearby ranger station. But as she reached the main trail, she was stopped by a shrouded figure, a man with a limp, his weathered face unreadable. He stared at her for a long moment, then cryptically muttered, "You're not the first to seek answers here. Some questions grow hungrier the deeper you dig." Before Jamie could respond, he turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving only the rustle of his passing and a chill wind in his wake. Determined not to retreat, Jamie brought her findings to Ranger Olivia Park, the lead officer at the remote Granite Lake station. Shocked by the evidence, Olivia gathered a small team to sweep the surrounding forest, focusing on the areas marked in the mysterious notebooks. Together, they discovered hidden caches of supplies, rusty lanterns, preserved food, more cryptic drawings, and signs that someone had been living in a nearby collapsed cabin over many years, coming and going in silence. As forensic teams combed the site, they began to reconstruct the timeline. Analysis showed that the tents and artifacts of the Granite Ten had been moved piece by piece, sometimes years apart, meticulously hidden and sometimes rearranged. Whoever had orchestrated this was a master of patience, a person, or people, who thrived in the margins of civilization. Late one night, with storms pelting the roof of the ranger station, Jamie pored over the new notebooks. One passage chilled her, a detailed entry describing the last night of the Granite Ten, their fear at the unfamiliar sounds, the decision to move camp, and then abrupt silence. Another ominous note followed decades later, written in a different hand, mentioning the balance must be kept, and the Watcher's Eye never closes. On the final day of her search, Jamie encountered the mysterious limping man once more. This time, with Olivia and her team nearby, she calmly asked for the truth. The man hesitated, then offered a fractured confession. He'd been drawn to Granite Lake as a boy, hiding supplies for those who disappeared, compelled by old stories told by his own grandfather. When the Granite Ten vanished, he discovered their abandoned camp and, haunted by guilt and fear, spent years returning to hide evidence, believing that the forest itself demands silence. He denied harming the campers, but hinted at others who once stalked the woods loners, outcasts, and those who wanted the lake's secrets to stay buried. Authorities concluded that the Granite Ten likely fell victim to a chain of predatory misfits and deliberate concealment. Over decades, the mystery had been magnified by paranoia, ritual, and the obsessive actions of a few isolated souls. For Jamie, while the full truth of what happened to her cousin Marcus and the others might never be known, she found a somber peace. She and Olivia led a memorial hike along Granite's shore, leaving wildflowers and the recovered journals beneath the Watcher's Eye stone. The tale of the Granite Ten became a legend, not just of loss, but of vigilance, of asking questions, remembering, and honoring the past, even when no answers come. Though the forest would always hold its secrets, those who searched refused to let the shadows win.